So today, Adam, I wanted to show you Piers Morgan exposing, annihilating, destroying how worthless and idiotic this Norman Finkelstein guy is and his take on Israel, where he refuses to even condemn Hamas.
What? He goes to the mat on this concentration camp thing and provides no evidence. Nothing. Nothing. Yeah. You're supposed to be the scholar who studied the area, the region for years, decades, even. You'd devote your life to it. You can't come up with one story that justifies this concentration camp narrative?
Let's jump into it.
Kicked off. I want to take you back, if I may, to October the 7th, because your first reaction to what happened on October the 7th incensed many people. You posted on Substack a piece about what had happened on the day, and it included this. For the past 20 years, the people of Gaza, half of whom are children, have been immured in a concentration camp. Today, they breach the camp's walls. If we honour John Brown's armed resistance to slavery, if we honour the Jews who revolted in the Warsaw Ghetto, the moral consistency commands that we honour the heroic resistance in Gaza. I, for one, will never begrudge. On the contrary, it warms every fibre of my soul. The scenes of Gaza's smiling children as their arrogant Jewish supremacist oppressors have finally been humbled. And you ended by saying, the stars above in heaven are looking kindly down. Glory, glory, hallelujah. The souls of Gaza go marching on.
That, like, just insane.
That's it. That is totally insane.
Like, it's just so disgustingly, what a disgustingly insane thing to write on that day, on October 7th. Regardless of how anyone feels about the subject, who's more right or who's more wrong. That's like he's in the second thought, calling it based round. That's like even worse than that. He went even more extreme than second thought did.
Second thought is a dumb kid in his 20s. How old is this guy? This is
it's like in
insanity.
His 60s.
Yeah. This is infuriating. I can't imagine being the people of Israel right now with their family members still being held hostage.
Right.
Knowing that this kind of insanity is out there.
Well, okay, so let's see. So I'm really glad Piers is going after him with this. So let's see what his response is.
With the benefit of a few weeks now, do you regret the tone of that initial response to what happened?
My initial response was to the initial news stories. You will recall, I'm sure, that initially what we were informed was that there was a breakout from Gaza concentration camp, that approximately 1,500 people had broken out, and that about 50 people, that was the initial number that was given, approximately 50 Israelis were killed. The number gradually grew, went from 50, a couple of days later it went to 100, and I'm sure you'll remember the number didn't reach 1,400 until about 10 days later. Initially, it was reasonable, it was reasonable to assume that people had been killed in a firefight, which was not the case, at least not fully the case. So my initial reaction was to the initial news stories. By the third or fourth day, I was clearly compelled to rethink my initial statements and try to make sense of what was clearly a moral quandary. And at that point, I considered my judgment on the basis of the new information that was available.
Okay.
And my own sense, yes, go ahead.
Okay, so his position is that the day of October 7th, when he made the insane post, all he knew was that, this is what seems contradictory. He knew that 1,500 people from Hamas entered Israel, but he only thought 50 people got killed somehow. He thought only 50 people got killed. He says, not my fault, Piers. I didn't know. Well, I did know, and you did know, because people on Twitter we're talking about what was happening that the day it happened. Okay.
Correct.
And if you bring up the first slide,
So
so
here we have Twitter from October 7th.
yeah, so this is all October 7th. And these are all tweets. And this is just a handful of tweets. There's like dozens and dozens and dozens of these tweets, okay, that were all showing that they knew people were being killed, civilians were being killed. They knew people were getting kidnapped. The picture of the girl, we're not going to show it because of the TOS stuff, but you could see that they already had identified the girl whose body was in the back of that truck that everyone saw that picture. That was on October 7th that happened. People already knew that all these people had been kidnapped, that their family had been kidnapped. There's already videos. You can see the bottom left here. That's a video of Hamas people going into a kibbutz in Israel and just like going into rooms and starting to shoot people. Like the idea that people didn't know what was going on October 7th is like insane if you were paying remotely even tiny bit of attention.
Right. Yes. I would double check before I posted something like that on Substack.
And you might say, okay, listen, Norman, he's a big boomer. Okay, he doesn't know about Twitter, right? Well, if you go to the next slide, this is just a couple of articles that were all written on October 7th.
So we got CNN, AP News.
Yes.
CNN, you could just turn on the TV and CNN is on.
Yes. So. AP News. This is October 7th. 250 people were killed and 1,500 wounded in Saturday's attack, making it the deadliest in Israel's in decades. Okay. PBS. What to know as the conflict erupts between Hamas and Israel. 250 people are believed to have been killed. CNN. This was written October 7th. They updated it the next day, but it's about the music festival that they killed people and took hostages. It's just, even Al Jazeera had an article where they were saying Israeli media is reporting 250 people have been killed on October 7th.
Right.
So how irresponsible, what an old buffoonish fool that this guy is, that he goes out there and he puts this insane statement. Like, where's he getting his news from? Where's this I only heard 50 people got killed, which, by the way, like, why would that be a good thing? Like, listen, only 50 innocent people died, Adam. I don't know if you know that. So it's, that's totally fine, I guess, to celebrate like 50 random innocent people just getting killed, because they happen to be Israeli citizens.
I'm still baffled by the fact that 3 days later, when he does know what's going on, it's a moral quandary. What the hell?
It's a moral quandary, Piers.
If this is a moral there's nothing clearer than what is going on here. In my estimation, Sitch, I don't know about you. There's no moral quandaries for me.
No.
Killing. I'm against killing innocent people. I'm just going to put my foot down there.
Mm-hmm. And then, so I was looking up, I was trying to figure out, like, where does this 50 number come from that he states? Okay. Where does this 50 people killed come from? And I was looking it up and I couldn't find it anywhere. But I did find that 50 number come up.
Okay.
Kind of interesting. Had nothing to do with people being killed. It said that 50 people were taken hostage.
Okay.
And this is on the next slide. Now, the only thing I could find that mentioned 50 people was on October 7th. So on that day, they were saying that 50 hostages had been taken. So this is what he saw. He saw that 50 hostages had been taken, and then he turned around and he wrote that insane Substack post. After saying 50, which obviously 50 hostages had been taken and 1,500 people crossed the border, as he said, the reasonable, rational person would say, well, I'm sure a bunch more people got killed, right?
Than hostages?
Yes.
I would look, just 50 hostages is an insane amount of hostages.
Yes. So after he saw that 50 Israeli civilians had been taken hostages, okay, he goes out and he writes that insane Substack post where he's saying, "Oh, I'm so glad, that this happened." Like, what? This guy is such a piece of crap.
Especially if they're hostages, like you don't know what they're going to do. Take them back and torture them? Is that cool? Is that your Substack post is endorsing that?
That's a moral quandary, Adam.
It's not. Look. It's insane. And obviously he's using the framing that drives me insane, the concentration camp, open air prison framing.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is just drives me nuts.
Okay, let's go back to this video. Because Piers does he does hit him with the timeline, which I really appreciate. So it kind of exposes this.
Well, I just want to look. I've done a timeline for my own benefit based on what happened that day. We know the attacks began at 6:30 in the morning. We know that at 11:18 a.m., Israel confirmed, as you say, 40 dead, 700 injured. At 11:35, Benjamin Netanyahu said we are at war. At 12:30 that day, at lunchtime, I tweeted horrifying and appalling scenes from Israel. This murderous, indiscriminate Hamas terror attack on Israeli people is shameful and indefensible. By 4:17, Israel said 100 were dead at least, 985 wounded. Civilian hostages have been taken. At 4 o'clock, a little later than that, around the same time, footage is released of the attack reporting that 3,000 bombs and firearms have been fired off by Hamas. Civilians have been killed, and so on. And yet at 6:30, and then again at 9:16, you were retweeting your initial Substack, and you then added at 9:16 that you felt the hostage situation was crocodile tears. So I would take issue with your statement that you thought it was only after 2 or 3 days that anyone had a clue about the scale of what had happened here. It was very obvious during that Saturday about the mounting scale of horror. And I just don't understand why someone as scholarly as you, as expert in this region, in this conflict as you are, why your response would be that for several days, one of glorifying in the in what you called heroic resistance, whereas mine, and I've always tried to be fair-minded about this conflict and reported it for CNN and tried to be fair and accurate as and when I've seen it, that I at midday that day, I'm talking about a murderous, indiscriminate terror attack and horrifying and appalling scenes. I just don't believe that you weren't aware, with great respect, about the scale of what was going on.
You like that? He did the great respect. With great respect, you sound like an insane monster.
He's so dour in this situation. I'm wondering why he even agreed to do this interview. It's obvious.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So I just want to read like the first sentence of that Substack post that Piers brought up. It's titled, this is on October 7th, okay? So he knows, that's where he got the 50 number from, is that he knows that 50 hostages had been taken. So the Substack on October 7th, when he knows 50 innocent civilians have been taken as hostage, he titles it Hostages Learning from Israel. The crocodile tears, the crocodile tears. Okay, so the fake tears. The crocodile tears have begun over Israeli hostages taken by Gaza militants. But Israel has held the 2.1 million people of Gaza, including 1 million children, hostage in one of the most densely populated areas of the planet for nearly 20 years. Okay. So he has this whole, nanny boo-boo, you deserve it because you're holding them hostage attitude for this entire situation.
Yeah, all of this rests on the situation in Gaza actually being a hostage situation.
Yeah.
Which I keep looking into this and finding, yeah, there's a conflict. There's a conflict between Israelis and Palestinians, but to describe it as a concentration camp where people have full control over everything you do, what time you eat, when you can leave the house, all that kind of stuff, that's just false, fictitious. That framing doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, Piers, let me begin by saying I want to have a civil conversation, and I'm going to do my darndest to remain faithful to the facts and faithful to truth. I'll do my darndest not to exaggerate. The first thing I have to say is I don't tweet. I've never been on Twitter. I have 3 young tech people who I send statements to, and then they make the decision where to place it on Substack, on Twitter, and so forth. Okay, I just want to clear that up.
It's not my fault. Listen, I have other people do my tweets for me. Like, why does he even bring this up? Why does it matter? If they're saying his statements, how's it relevant?
It's not relevant. Look, what he's done is completely irresponsible. Don't try to push the buck on some other tech person.
Mm-hmm.
I made one statement on the first day on the basis of the information that was available to me. The information was 50 people had been killed. Now, my memory is, but I won't claim my memory is infallible. The numbers didn't start to grow until the next day.
That's not true.
As the numbers, okay.
It's just not true.
Piers.
Well, Professor, with respect.
Okay, I'm not going to.
It's not true.
Piers. Yeah, but you have to listen to what I say.
But you want me to believe you when you say you weren't
Yeah.
aware of the scale of this
No,
for several
Piers,
days. I find that just, I'm incredulous that you want me to believe that.
Okay, Piers, I'm not going to force you to believe it, and I'm not going to even try to impose my will. I'm simply saying, as a factual matter, speaking for myself, I was not aware that the numbers had been beyond 50 when I made that statement. I will further state that to my knowledge, I could be mistaken, that I did not make another statement until the numbers started to grow. And I admit, I have said to you, it was a moral quandary.
Moral quandary bullshit.
Yeah. So again, it's like, okay, this isn't like you being ignorant just shows why no one should listen to you because you couldn't do like even a modicum of research on the news on this topic before you fired off this insanely incendiary Substack and then your assistant or whoever tweeted it out. Okay. Because it's wild.
It
That's
makes it seem like he was celebrating, like he was just getting drunk and calling his friends, having the time of his life. He couldn't check in with the news because he was throwing a party.
He was 100% celebrating in that Substack post, 100% celebrating. And then I actually checked his Substack, and the next day, so on the 8th, he did an emergency Zoom call. Okay, he called it, it's like an emergency Zoom call, I guess, with him and people that pay for Substack or whatever. And you can
get everyone is like, I'm paying for this crap.
Yes, and you can get some of the transcript is there. I have it. And here, bring up the next couple of slides. I want to show you. This is from what he says the day after. So the day after, the entire Zoom call, when I'm reading through it, it's just him. All it's him doing is just making justifications for Hamas. He doesn't at any point say that what they did was horrible or wrong or messed up. It's just him doing justification after justification after justification for their actions. It's wild. Okay.
Yeah.
When he says he didn't make another statement, like it's just, I don't know what he's even talking about. Oh, and before I even read that, when he said he only made that statement, this is also on the 7th. Okay. It's at 9:00 at night on the 7th. Medin Hassan tweets out. Okay. He says, taking children as hostages, if confirmed, is barbarism. Plain and simple, and does nothing to advance the cause of peace, resistance, or ending the occupation. The response to the ongoing suffering and killing of Palestinian children is not to, and then it cuts off and he says, is not to inflict suffering and killing to Israeli children. Okay.
Right.
Which is there anything like, isn't that the most obvious statement in the world to make?
Yeah. Peaceful resistance is the only way to end this conflict.
Right.
That's not a moral quandary. That's just fact.
Yeah, Medin Hassan, he's not saying that Israel is, the fucking most moral country in the world, but he's saying the response to the suffering and killing of Palestinian children is not to kill Israeli children, right? Very basic. Like, it's just a very basic thing that we could all imagine, we could all assume, any moral person could accept, right?
Yep.
But not old Norman. Norman's got to come in here. And his response to this tweet is insane. He says, if you smell the foul odor of a sewer rat, look around for Mehdi Hassan. I'm sorry, for Mehdi Hassan.
Wow, he calls him a sewer rat.
He
dehumanizes him.
For saying the most basic, like, moral thing in the world that you would have thought that every single person with an ounce of character that's not a psychopath would agree with. Norman's calling him a foul-smelling sewer rat.
Is this one of his tech people or is this him?
I don't know. This is his official Twitter account. I'm gonna say
This is insane. Look, about like dehumanizing people is the first step in the genocide arc.
Yes.
I'm very
Yes.
cautious about dehumanizing
Yes.
people. Come on, we're all in this together. Let's not dehumanize people. That's how we get on these insane paths.
And then underneath it, he says, quote, if confirmed, in other words, because Midi said if confirmed, in other words, this sewer rat.
Look, he goes at it again.
And he's now made an acronym. He's made an acronym for him, TSR. Doesn't really know if Palestinian militants took children hostages, but who cares? Well, guess what, Norman? Okay. It turns out that they did, and that he was completely 100% correct. And the information about them taking hostages on October 7th was 100% correct. And you and your idiotic assumptions about the situation on that day were all wrong.
They were, yeah. He sees these people as just innocent victims that would never hurt a fly. They're just taking hostages so that they have some sort of leverage so they can get out of their incarceration in the Gaza Strip. But they would never rape or murder them or hurt them in any way, shape, or form. Sitch, these people are they're being held at the Holiday Inn.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, no, this guy is just...
So listen,
this is what we call a useful idiot, Sitch.
This guy's beyond a useful idiot. This guy his brain is just broken. I don't know why he's the way he is. I don't know what caused him to be this way, but his brain is broken, and no one should take a single thing he says seriously because he's a doddering fool. Okay.
Yes.
And if you're just walking around, and you smell a foul odor, okay, it's probably Norman walking by somewhere, right?
Yeah, he forgot to brush his teeth for a month.
Yeah. So, okay, so I want to read this part. This is from his Zoom. This is a transcript from his Zoom meeting. This is the next day. It's October 8th. His emergency Zoom meeting. Okay.
This is a transcript from the Zoom meeting here?
Yeah, this is just it's a long thing. So
let's hear the backpedaling.
This is just a piece of it. No, there's like no backpedaling in this. What's even crazier? If there's backpedaling, that would be better. Okay. All that's in this is him just making excuses. He brings up the whole Nat Turner thing. He brings up all the, they're in open air prison concentration camp, so they're totally justified, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So he says, at the top, he does say he recognizes the distinction between civilians and combatants. But then he says, however, that's never good, right?
Oh, that's bad.
I recognize the distinction between civilians and combatants. However, that's never
However, right. Oh no, he's making
the
baby soldier argument.
Right. But then it's really nice because when he talks, he drones on and on and on to try to obfuscate whatever he's talking about. He says, I think neither legal formulas nor sociological texts in all circumstances can capture the complexities of life. Most of the Hamas militants probably the ones who broke through the fence. And then he says, underneath that, it's the first time out of Gaza because you assume they're mostly in their 20s. The blockade has been going on now for 18 years. They grew up in a concentration camp. They want to be free. One of the natures of current technology is they get to see on the screen all these people walking free. They want to be free. They joined Hamas. They volunteered. Yes, by international law, that constitutes combatants. Do I think they're legitimate targets because they're combatants? You'll never convince me. You'll never convince me.
So the Hamas people are not legitimate targets?
That's what he just said.
They're literally kidnappers. We're just supposed to let them go free?
But they wanted to be free, Adam. You don't understand. They just wanted to be free, right?
This is some insane stuff, Sitch.
I know what the law says. I know what I'm legally obliged to say. I know what, as a scholar, a reported scholar, I'm supposed to say. But are you going to convince me as a person who grew up in a concentration camp and wants to breathe free air is to use the language of international law a legitimate target? I can't do it. I cannot.
This concentration camp just is totally clouding his judgment. As soon as you start believing that the Gaza Strip is a concentration camp where you have a guard constantly watching over you, keeping you in a room, delivering your meals at certain times a day, controlling your diet, all these different things that come along with a concentration camp. You're never going to escape that framing.
Yeah.
That framing is just poisoning all of his thinking on this.
Well, it's stupid on two reasons. One, we can look at it if it's true, and then look at the truth claim of it. Even if it's true, okay. Even if it's true that like we went back and a bunch of Jews escaped from a oh, excuse me. I'm dying. Okay. Even if it's true, like hypothetically, a bunch of Jews escaped from a concentration camp in World War II, that wouldn't give them the moral justification to just start
to go murdering
a bunch of German people, like random fucking German children and German people are just like walking around like, well, they escaped from concentration camps, so I guess they just get to murder whoever they want. Like how, and I really want to hone in on this, how worthless is Norman's worldview? How worthless as a scholar is his moral system if he can't even make the determination that you shouldn't be killing and kidnapping innocent civilians and children?
Yes. Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you've suffered. It doesn't matter what you've suffered at all. There's a reason that in America, we don't say, hey, if you've been wronged by a criminal, you get to determine the punishment that gets meted out on that guy, right? You don't say,
of course.
Your child got kidnapped and killed by someone, so you get to burn them alive and torture them, right? Like we don't do that. No moral system function, or no civilized moral system, functions where you're like, oh, the person who's been aggrieved gets to just decide whatever crazy punishment. It's like, no, that's the whole reason we take it out of those people's hands and we have it in a system of written laws is because we understand that people are emotional and they're going to do crazy things, and we can't live in a society under that level of barbarism.
But it seems that Norman has adopted that barbaric moral system. The Substack is a testament to that.
Yes. And his moral framework is so stupid that under his same theory here, you could say to an Israeli father who say his wife and all of his children got killed on October 7th. All right.
Right.
And so does that mean that he's then morally justified to walk into Gaza or even the West Bank and just start mowing down hundreds of random Palestinian people that are just standing around just because his family got killed?
Even just killing the same number of people in his family that got killed, killing those innocent people on the Palestinian side, it's still immoral. It's still wrong.
It's this is insane. This is such a, it's the fact that he says this and people just accept it. People are so dumb that they don't understand. Yeah, you can understand why someone would do something horrible. Doesn't mean we ever have to accept it. I get it. They have really shitty lives. That doesn't justify killing innocent people. Nothing does that. Number one, nothing does that. Number two, it's not even like a situation where there could be some outcome that is either unavoidable or beneficial, right? Because now we know what is the outcome of Hamas's action. They killed a bunch of random innocent people, and now even more Palestinians have died, and so much of Gaza has been destroyed in response to those actions. Okay.
Yeah.
So you would say, okay, so we have an action killing random innocent people, number one, and then we have the response. More Palestinians die and much of Gaza gets destroyed. So it should be so crystal clear, so obvious how apparent and how immoral and stupid this action is, and he still won't condemn it.
Right. They are achieving their political goals, which is the terrible part of all this. And Norman Finkelstein, Hamas is achieving its political goals, yeah. And Norman Finkelstein here is a useful idiot for them achieving their political goals, because their ultimate goal is to stand in the way of normalizing relationship between these Arab countries and Israel. It looks like that's going to happen. Well, it's hard to say now with the October 7th attacks and Gaza thrown into turmoil, but we were getting closer and closer to that.
Yeah.
And As I've said many, many times on the show, as I'm reading more and more on the situation, everything I'm reading pretty much confirms what I've said. Hamas is terrified of losing power. They want to stay in control because they're living the lap of luxury. They're able to say and do whatever they want and are completely unaccountable. They're above the law. As soon as the people start gaining some sort of political power, some sort of prosperity, Hamas loses political power. So Norman Finkelstein wants to see the Palestinian people gain political power. It's not Israel that's standing in the way of that. It's Hamas. And the fact that he's simping for these murderous gangsters and thinks he's doing a moral justice in the world is just sick. Log off, guy. Get off the internet. You disconnect your phone. Just leave us alone. That's my take.
Mm-hmm. It's a moral quandary, Adam.
It's not a moral quandary, okay? It's sad. It's sad. It's sad that so many people have been taken in by this narrative. This narrative that Hamas has just produced out of whole cloth. This completely fictitious narrative that they care one iota about the Palestinian people. They're using the Palestinian people. They're using the Palestinian people as pawns in their own quest for power.
Yeah.
Sad. It's sad. Look, we call this stuff out when our politicians do it. We see it all the time in our own politicians. When our politicians care more about becoming president than they do about caring for their own constituents, we call them out. How come when it happens in Gaza, all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, I can't, it's completely makes no sense to me. Why is it totally obvious when it's happening to us, but we can't see it when it's happening to other people, Sitch?
Because, they're just in a bad situation. There's like this weird thing where some people, if there's people that are in a bad situation, they just automatically I don't know if it's the bigotry of low expectations or something, but they just become so deferential to whatever their behavior is and say, well, they're in a bad situation. They, drew a bad lot in life. So therefore, I guess I have to let them walk all over me because I didn't suffer as much as they did.
Right.
It's like total weaponized guilt is just basically has boiled some of these people's brains alive.
I disagree with this narrative completely, but I've seen this narrative on the right wing. I've seen it on Fox News. I've seen other right wing commentators say it. They've said that the Palestinian people support Hamas. They point to these opinion polls saying that the Palestinian people support Hamas and therefore support this thing that Hamas has done on October 7th, this terrorist attack. Now, I don't doubt that the Palestinian people support these terrible, terrible things, but they've been put in a situation where culturally they're basically destitute, and they've made Israel out to be a scapegoat for all of the problems that the people suffer, even though all of the problems are the result of Hamas's bad governing policies. Like, Hamas does a bad job governing, and it suits their interests because it turns the population against Israel and makes a scapegoat that's going to keep them in power forever. So the West needs to wisen up. The West needs to stop falling for this nonsense. Okay. And Finkelstein here, who is, so far left. I mean, he's basically adopting the same right-wing framing of Fox News. It's insane.
Well, actually, it's interesting that you said that. So I have another clip that we'll watch a little chunk of. We'll come back to this, but where he was on Jimmy Dore.
Finkelstein was?
Finkelstein was on Jimmy Dore. Okay.
Oh my God.
And this was, let's see, what was the date? October 10th. Okay. So this is 3 days after the attack. And he kind of talks about this. So you'll love this. It has exactly with what you're saying here.
I do not defend Hamas. That's the responsibility of the Palestinian people to choose their leaders. If that economic blockade had not been imposed, and Hamas failed in its leadership responsibilities, presumably it would have been voted out, Hamas would have been voted out in the next election. The democratic process was never allowed to the Palestinian people. Hillary Clinton.
Okay, so when he says that wasn't allowed by the Palestinian people, he's not saying by Hamas. Okay,
but it
he's
was
saying,
by Hamas. What are you talking about?
He's saying by Israel and by the West. Okay, that somehow it's Israel's fault that Hamas wasn't voted out of office. Like how detached from the situation is he? If he's just like, listen, if Hamas was just not doing good things for the Palestinian people, they just would be voted out of office. It's very simple.
So his narrative is that we're not letting elections take place because Hamas serves our interest. I mean, I've heard that argument as well.
Yes, Israel, not like we're, but like, yeah, Israel. And then he goes on to complain about, Hillary said that we should have, rigged the elections or something, right?
Right.
So this is after Hamas won. But I want to go back and show you. So remember, this is, again, this is 3 days after the attack. And I just want you to see how completely animated he gets on this topic. Okay, not on the people the Israelis that were killed, right? That's not what animates him, but see what animates him, what gets him all fired up here.
Does it really surprise you? Is it really a shock that a couple of days ago, the people of Gaza, most of whom, let's bear it in mind, most of whom were born in that concentration camp. Mm-hmm. They were born into it. Does it really shock you that they would do something desperate to break free of that concentration camp? Mm. And who dare criticize whatever tactics they employed? I am not approving it, but I am not disapproving it, because I don't know what I would do if I had been born into a concentration camp and spent 20 years of my life there.
Yeah.
How dare you? How dare you condemn the butchering and kidnapping of innocent civilians, women, men, and children? How dare you?
Yeah.
Like, how just Norman's entire worldview is just worthless. It's just worthless. He's a worthless person. Everything he says is worthless. If you cannot construct a worldview or a moral system where you can't say, hey, you shouldn't go killing, kidnapping, butchering, raping random innocent people because like the government of that country aggrieved you or your parents or did something else to you, right? Then just get out of the public sphere. You are not suitable for this conversation if you cannot just flatly condemn the murder and kidnapping of innocent civilians, okay? Just get out.
Yeah, he is condoning the most barbaric behavior imaginable. That's what's so disgusting about it.
Yes.
You're literally condoning this behavior. I don't care what you say about, look, I'm not condemning them, but look, he is condoning it on some level. If you're not willing to condemn it, you are condoning it.
Yes.
You're making arguments in favor of it on your freaking Substack.
It's just so insane because it's like, this is the same arguments when I see, some people who are like, oh, they should just kill, they should just flatten Gaza. They should nuke it, blah, 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 blah. They should kill all those innocent people. And it's like, I don't know how, like, Norman has a philosophical moral stance that would allow those opinions. It's the same opinion.
It is.
You could say like, oh, there was some, there's people who have lost family to suicide bombings, to mortar attacks, to this attack, who have their entire lives have been destroyed, by Palestinian attacks or Palestinian terrorists. And so does that just justify them to have like the most brutal response imaginable Of course it doesn't. That's insane.
That is totally insane. Yes, but you're right. His worldview justifies genocide.
Yes. It's like, is this what's so bizarre? This guy who's supposed to be some big empathetic lefty, and yet his brain rot, his empathy guilt-ridden brain rot is so bad that he's basically operating under like a first century barbarism, just, this family wronged me, just purge the entire, generation line from existence.
In the beginning, he focuses in on the 50 number as if when it rose and all of a sudden it created problems for him. But why is it 50 is an insane number to me.
Yeah. And he didn't even say like, oh, they killed 50 military people trying to escape. Like he's making it sound like, oh, there's a prison break. And so they're just like, they killed the 50 guards to escape the prison so they could be free, right? Like That's what he's making it sound like. It's like,
he makes them all sound like Tim Robbins in Shawshank Redemption too.
Yeah,
they're all innocent men who've never done anything. All these guys have been involved in terrorist attacks.
Right.
That's why they get thrown in prison.
And then like, they're going to just like kill the prison guards and escape somewhere in the world and then live happily ever after. And it's like, no.
Hamas is an organization built on performing terrorist attacks inside of Israel. That is their ultimate goal. That is their charter. They convert people to commit terrorist attacks. Okay?
Yes.
These people end up in jail because Israeli intelligence finds out that they're going to do a terrorist attack. They have explosives on them and they foil the terrorist attack and incarcerate them. So this idea that they're just incarcerating people who are innocent people, they don't want innocent people incarcerated. They want to stop the terrorist attacks.
And, as someone whose parents were literally in concentration camps, it is really disgusting that he keeps using that language.
Yeah, I know. It's fucking so disgusting.
Obviously the living conditions in Gaza are pretty bad. I'm not going to say they're great, but, people do own businesses there. Okay. People do own homes there. That's what you're seeing all get destroyed. You're seeing people's businesses and cars and homes be destroyed. There are operating hospitals with doctors who are paid to work as doctors. Like, I mean, I don't know what kind of concentration camp his parents were in, where it was a giant city where the Jews had their own, staffed hospitals that had like normal modern facilities, where the Jews ran, restaurants, where the Jews had extensive underground tunnel networks filled with guns and mortars and all sorts of weapons and stuff. I don't know what kind of crazy concentration camp has any of that stuff in it.
Yeah, the fact that he calls himself a truth seeker and he keeps using the concentration camp framing just makes him completely uncredible. He has zero credibility at this point. Concentration camp is where a guard comes by and tosses a tray under your door with a few scraps of food on it twice a day. That's a concentration camp.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
A concentration camp is you in a room with a toilet and 7 other people. Okay. That's a concentration camp. That's not what's going on in Gaza. Okay.
No.
If you want to call every poor place in the United States or the world a concentration camp, language has lost all meaning. Okay. It's ridiculous.
It was like, was it aristocracy was telling her, was it her grandfather was like, his entire family, except for one sister, I think he had 3 other siblings and both his parents. They basically the Nazis split them up and they sent most of the family to death camps just to die. And then they sent him and his older sister, because they looked healthy enough to be in forced labor for the Nazis. They sent them to a work camp where they essentially would work you to death.
Yes.
And then he was just fortunate enough that they got freed before that happened.
Forced labor. Slave labor. That's not happening. That's not happening in Gaza.
It's insane to me.
I read Hassan Yusuf's book on this. Mm-hmm. He's out there selling baklava for his mom. It's not a concentration camp, okay? He ran a computer repair business that he started himself.
And this is the guy, the son of the Hamas guy?
Yes, yeah. We'll talk more about it on Sunday.
I've tried to shine a light on the plight of the Palestinians for many, many years. And I feel that the oppression of the Palestinian people for many decades has been absolutely outrageous. So on that, we can completely agree. But when it comes to what you're saying here, it seems to me what you're trying to paint is a picture of some kind of moral justification for what Hamas did. And that's where you lose me, because I don't see why there could be anyone who can see the scale of what Hamas did on October the 7th and not simply condemn it out of hand. You may also want to condemn some of the response by Israel. That's completely normal. I would say that there are serious question marks about the proportionality of what they've been doing. But if you can't start from a basic humanity position of saying what happened on October the 7th was a disgusting terror attack worthy of condemnation, then for me, I find it very hard to then respect anyone's demand for people to condemn Israel and their response.
Perfect.
Yeah. Paddle his butt.
Piers just perfectly lays it all out.
Yeah, he is condoning it. He's justifying it. He's rationalizing. He's giving people arguments in favor of it. This is just and he goes to the mat on this concentration camp thing and provides no evidence. Nothing. Nothing. You're supposed to be the scholar who studied the area, the region for years, decades, even you'd devoted your life to it. You can't come up with one story that justifies this concentration camp narrative. Look, I've heard this guy blabbering all over the place so many times. He never brings the receipts for anything. I've read more on the situation in the Gaza Strip from other sources that completely contradict this concentration camp narrative. Yeah, it's poor. Yeah, they don't have any police. That kind of sucks. And it's run by militant Islamic gangs. It's insane.
And it's crazy. I watched a video that he put up a few months ago where he says that Russia had the moral right to invade Ukraine.
Yeah, this guy is done. His brain is fried on leftism, man.
Yes, this is just like the America bad lens is completely toxified every part of his brain here. The Palestinian people are so subjugated that they have a right to basically do whatever horrific atrocities, I guess, against Israelis that they want, and he won't condemn it. But it's totally fine for Russia, the stronger country, to just like go and invade Ukraine unprompted and just start killing and laying waste to the entire countryside. That's the most insane contradiction ever. And he's totally fine with it. He's just 100% totally fine with it. Insane contradiction.
He doesn't see the contradiction though. It's like whoever's the victim, grew up in a concentration camp gets to do whatever they want.
But how could you even if because he goes on and does the whole America and NATO forced Russia to attack Ukraine, all that nonsense. We've all heard that nonsense before. But even if you believe that nonsense, okay, why would that then justify you just indiscriminately shelling and blowing up and killing like all these people in all the Ukrainian cities?
Yeah,
and causing all that chaos and destruction and death. That justifies that? Like, he's this guy. No one should take this guy seriously. No one should listen, guy. This guy is a buffoon. He is the most buffoonish of buffoon. He is a doddering old fool. Okay, that's how we should all conceptualize it. Doddering old fool.
Hi, you just listened to a Sitch and Adam recorded video. That's right, we're doing Monday through Friday deep dive recorded videos now. And of course, we're still doing our live streams. Our live streams are on Sunday and Tuesday starting at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. And you can super chat us, or you can join the channel. Subscribe to this channel right here to watch the live show or watch more of our awesome deep dive videos.